as I see that we are being seen by people, here we go. And I will start the show. I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the podcast, YouTube channel, and blog where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses while controlling risk. So if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. Are you thinking of growing your business or beginning a journey into entrepreneurship? Take a shortcut to success by buying an existing and profitable business the right way. Visit businessbuyeradvantage.com and learn more about my online training, group coaching, and consulting services designed to help you win. Hey everyone, welcome on board. Today we're talking with Ashish Gupta, who is a fractional COO. We're going to get a little bit into Ashish's background. We're going to talk about the world of operations in the modern small business. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this applies to people who are doing deals, which is what we talk about here on the show. So I think we should kick things off just by giving people an opportunity to meet you. Ashish was a guest speaker in our Business Buyer Advantage group coaching program, where he talked in depth about some of the processes and how they look at sort of operating problems within small businesses. And we may get into that today, but what I really want to focus on today is just the impact of better operational management on transactions. And we're going to, of course, answer questions from people out there in the audience. So Ashish, can you give us a little bit about your background and tell us how you got started?
Yep. Firstly, thanks again for having me on again. And I really enjoyed our conversation last time and look forward to this one and meeting some of your audience today. So a bit about me. I've been in tech most of my career. I was previously the co-founder of a wireless company, and it was one of those like starting in garage type stories. We developed a new technology, eventually productized it, and scaled up the business. It was eventually acquired by a Fortune 500, Qualcomm, out of San Diego. After that, I was at Apple in senior management in their iPhone operations team and managed a pretty sizable worldwide team and a $2 billion a year budget around manufacturing, supply chain, procurement. Eventually, I had the entrepreneurial bug again. I quit Apple, and I personally acquired a distressed e-commerce business, and probably went through many of the journeys that much of your audience is either on their path on or is already deeply involved in. This was a turnaround situation, so I spent 4 or 5 years turning every aspect of that business around. It was very painful, but it eventually did work. It did turn around. I turned around the sales, the team, the culture, the sales, the B2B channels, B2C channels. And it was after 4 or 5 years acquired by a larger competitor of ours. After that, I had the opportunity to help a couple of small, medium-sized businesses where their founders were stuck. So their revenues had either plateaued, their teams were burnt out. The team felt like they didn't know what else they could try, and they'd gone down all the different avenues they could think of. So I jumped in as a fractional COO within 3-4 months, was able to retool their businesses and get them back on a track of 30-40% growth within just 3-4 months of joining them. I eventually had more engagements than I could handle myself as a fractional COO, and that's when I started up scaleupexec.com, and we're a small team of the top tier COOs, some of the gems that I've come across over the years, and we dive into different businesses to help them with their scaling and growth and turnarounds as well.
So let me ask you one question about this, about the turnaround before we move on. I'm always warning people that if you buy a distressed business in some way, you're paying money for something that is not an asset; it's losing money, or else it wouldn't be distressed. And then you also have to finance losses until you can turn it around. How long did you own it before you got to some kind of cash flow positive situation, or at least breaking even, I guess?
Yeah, we got breaking even within about 2.5 years. So it was much longer than I'd expected. I thought I'd be able to turn around much faster, but it was very difficult. And I think in pretty much every scenario, when you acquire a business, things are often not as rosy as they look. Like even in this case, I knew it was a turnaround, but I didn't realize how much of a turnaround it would be. So it was very challenging, and not only practically challenging, but even emotionally taxing. And it was tough as a founder to go through that, or as a
Yeah,
CEO to go through that. Yeah.
I bet. I bet. And so you eventually ended up in the world, like, I mean, you had a background with your startup and then you worked for Apple and then you ended up in this smaller business world. I guess the reason why the demand for fractional COOs is from the smaller companies is because if companies are big enough, they just have their own full-time person, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think there's actually two different things. One is in the small, medium-sized business, so meaning like less than, let's say, 50 million a year revenue, from maybe a million a year in revenue to 50 million a year in revenue. That's kind of the range of most of our customers. Uh, there's two things. One is that they may not be able to afford a full-timer, or there may not be a need for a full-timer at the moment. But the second is really the access to top quality talent. If you're a several hundred million a year or more revenue business, you have greater access to talent. Or if, let's say you're in the tech world and you're a startup, but it's a sexy industry to be in, and so it's easier to get access to top tier talent. But if you're a traditional business, which many of these acquisitions that we end up talking about are in, then it's hard to get access to people who've again scaled businesses and actually have that deep proven experience to take it to where it's possible to take to if you have the right talent in place. So yeah, that's actually the second consideration here.
Well, and I'm I'm glad you brought that up because we face this often when we hear people, there's online voices that say buy a business and put a manager in charge, and one of the things that I like to bring up is that the caliber of the manager that the local Coca-Cola plant office can hire is very different than the quality of manager that a small business can hire, just because of all the other opportunity that that engagement with the big company would bring to that individual. They're going to be able to attract sort of higher quality or more experienced people, et cetera, et cetera. So can you tell us, so everyone is clear, what does a COO do in any business so that we can start to understand what the fractional variety of COO would do in a smaller business?
Yep. So first is it's good to understand what a CEO does, and then your CEO will relate to that. So a CEO ideally should be someone who's focused on vision and strategy. A lot of times in the small business space, the CEO is doing a little bit of vision and strategy, but then they're actually doing a bunch of bookkeeping and they're doing a bunch of operations. And they're doing like their hands are in everything.
Yeah.
And that prevents them from doing what often is most necessary, which is guiding and steering the overall direction of the business. And especially being a torchbearer for sales and revenue growth. So ideally, a CEO is focused on vision, strategy, and sales, and a COO is now their right hand person that can come in and execute on that vision and strategy. And that means that they'll often be the one. The CEO is often the one managing the team. They have deep management and leadership experience. They know how to motivate the team. They know how to create a culture that is sustainable. They know how to take a vision and strategy and figure out, is that actually doable based on the skill set and capacity of my team? If not, then they might tweak that vision and strategy with the CEO. And then once that is clarified, then they'll actually take it and figure out, okay, how am I going to execute on this? Who has which skill set in the team? Some of those skill set I might need to upgrade. And maybe there's some gaps in the team that needs to be filled. And so I'll manage out all of that, and I'll even create the right KPIs, dashboards, the right accountability mechanisms to make sure the team is on track. And then I'll make sure that things get done as per the vision and strategy of the CEO.
So it sounds like, the vision or strategy, this is probably subject to some sort of review period. We review this every year kind of thing. And then if the strategy or vision were to change, that might then incur changes within operations. And so I'm imagining that there's some kind of cycle to this where the COO becomes more involved sort of in the implementation up front. And then there's this stepping back and tweaking the knobs as things move forward through time and constant adjustment and stuff. It sounds like there's more work maybe at the beginning of the year, if we're going to use an annual cycle, than towards the end. Am I uh, off track? Am I thinking or what?
Actually, I found that there's different types of work required at the
Okay.
beginning and different types of work required later on. It's not that your work might become less, but I think it's the type of things you spend your mind space on that will change. as time progresses. Like, for example, I think for pretty much in any business, let's say at the beginning of the year, you put together a strategy and vision. And then as the year progresses, you'll learn new things, or maybe you'll find that the market landscape has changed, or maybe your competitive uh, the folks that are your competitors are changing their strategies, and so you also have to adjust. So firstly, strategy is not something you just work on one time a year. It's something that you always should have your mind on, and always should be seeing, how do I adjust and how do I perfect and improve. And then because of that, your implementation will also keep on evolving and changing as your strategy changes. So your mind space might be at some period on strategy and vision, other periods on implementation, and then at other times it'll be on both. You'll actually be spending some of your time on both areas.
Okay. So what amount of time typically are a lot of small businesses then needing this COO oversight in this process of adjusting and iteration and watching what's going on? Because in our previous conversation that we did for the coaching group, you had said that you've got some customers that you spend as little as an hour a week with, and other customers where it's more like 4 hours, or maybe some of those were daily. I
Okay.
don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, can you kind of give us an idea of and maybe even give us some anonymous examples of how
Yeah.
different companies have different sort of levels of engagement with you and your
Yeah,
team?
absolutely. So the way that I frame our the way we work is on. I want us to be there every day, so you feel like we're not just a contractor or an external person. It should feel like a fractional CEO is not fractional. Like they're actually in the team. They're deeply ingrained in the culture, and so we're there every day. So our smallest plans are 1 hour a day, largest are 4 hours a day. So it's that kind of range. The amount of time that is required in a company is firstly very dependent on the caliber of talent. So if you have a COO who, I define it as like a typical COO, in 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, what they're able to accomplish because of their amount of experience that they've had, or the type of problems that they've worked through their career might be a bit limited. And so the in 8 or 10 hours a day, what they can accomplish might be much less than what somebody who's really deeply skilled, has gone through again and again a lot of the types of challenges that businesses face and have solved them in the past. What they can accomplish in 1 or 2 hours a day might be more than what somebody whose typical skill set can do in 8 to 10 hours a day. And as an example, one of the companies that is kind of interesting, we're now getting to the end of a life cycle of working with them. When we joined them, this is a construction business that's around 20 million a year in revenue. So it's a bit on the larger side, about 100 people in the team. When we joined, they had a full-time COO. The business was in a deep turnaround or a deep distress situation where they'd been losing 350K a month for the prior 18 months before we joined. And
Wow.
they were getting to the tail end of getting through their line of credit and tapping out of all of their finance options. And they had a full-time COO and, of course, CEO in place. So we joined them first on 1 hour a day, just to see if we can start diving into what might be going on here. And within 3 weeks, this was definitely not our intention, but within 3 weeks, the CEO said the type of value we're adding in 1 hour a day is disproportionate than what my full-time CEO is doing. And so she bumped us up to 3 hours a day. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, for the company, let go of that COO and just had us take over on 3 hours a day. And we're now directly managing the whole team of 100 people, just like the full-time COO was. And we're navigating the situation that the company was in. Within 3 months, we got them to net zero. In month 4, we got them profitable. Now it's month 14, and they're just at the tail end of a successful exit. So, this is just an example of what you can, if you have the right caliber of person, what you can do even on a 3 hour a day versus what a full-timer previously was able to do.
It sounds like you're describing my own learning curve when it came to plumbing. There was once a time in my life where I would spend an entire Saturday driving back and forth to the hardware store, talking with the guy there and buying little doodads and running back and forth and try to fiddle around with my own plumbing. And then you learn very quickly that for, I don't know, the price of a service call, you can get your entire Saturday back by having someone who knows what they're doing come in and fix the thing in an hour, right? To your point, and then it's done, and it's done correctly. The um, so so you mentioned construction. Is there a certain kind of industry that's more suited to having a COO than another kind?
So far, from what I've experienced, and we've had several dozen businesses that have engaged with us on a fractional CEO level, are the companies we've worked with are across pretty much every industry you can think of: tech, non-tech, many traditional businesses. We have a lot in commercial real estate, many in commercial printing, many in property management, others in event management, and financial firms, telecommunications companies, even charter schooling, medical practices. We're across all kinds of different industries. And actually, what's more relevant, what I see, is that it's not so much about the industry, but it's about the business problems that that company is facing. So if yeah, I'm not so concerned. Like, even many of our CEOs that we place into industries that never had experience in that industry before, but they have a lot of experience facing and solving the type of situations that that business is currently going through, and we're able to see success because of that. So I feel like a COO could be relevant in many different contexts.
Mm. Ashish, we got people coming in here from all over. We got Kevin, who's in Central Florida. Hey, Kevin, good to see you here today. And Victor's tuning in from Nottingham over in the UK. Good to see you again, Victor. And we look forward to answering your questions. Everyone who's watching live, please put them into the chat box. Um, I want to get back to that conversation about the people you hire, because I'm imagining that if you've got COOs on your team who are working an hour a day in one place and 3 hours a day in another place, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about how your team works together? Because what I'm guessing is that not only are they, really great at what they're doing, but the fact that this is literally a team of COOs. Uh, I'm imagining that there's a certain amount of cooperation between them where they give each other ideas and stuff when they're trying to solve the problems that a given business might have.
Yep, absolutely. So that's kind of the interesting thing, having a firm rather than having just individual CEOs that are working off on their own, where you do get a disproportionate benefit from having a group think that's available. So what happens is we have one CEO who's placed in each engagement. So it's very important to have that one person who knows inside out everything. And it's just like having an internal team member where they're deeply connected to the culture and the people in the company. When they're working through a business problem, they're firstly deeply skilled in facing those type of business problems and solving them. So they'll bring their own insight. But then I meet with each of my team members mostly every week, and we talk about the different business problems that each team member is facing and working through. And then I look through my team and see who else has worked through that specific type of problem before, and they pitch in ideas, and we kind of they'll funnel through into that one COO who's engaged in that. So that COO will determine which of these ideas are relevant to that context and which of them can they apply into that context, and then they go ahead and execute. So there is that interesting groupthink that happens, and the fact that everybody is deeply experienced, it adds much faster ways of solving problems than you just have one person.
Yeah, oh, I can see that. I can see that. Um, so if somebody is an owner of a small business that's watching our interview right now, what sort of problems might they be seeing which could be addressed by someone like yourself?
Yeah. Firstly, I think it's good to take a step back and see, what are my goals for the business? And then where am I right now? And does it look like there's a clear path that I already know how to take to get to those goals from where I am right now? If it's very clear on how I'm going to get to my goals, and I have the tools to allow me to get there, whether that's the team or my own knowledge or finances or strategy, then you probably don't need COO. But if you feel like you have certain goals and you're not exactly sure how to get there, or if you have the right capacity or capability in yourself or in your team to get there, that's when it could be relevant to try and find somebody to come in and help you. That's one aspect. Second is, if you feel like you're too involved in the day-to-day operations of a business, your hands are too deep and you're not able to extrapolate yourself into a visionary or strategy role like I mentioned earlier on, then it's probably a good time to see how to bring in somebody that can support you on that. Third piece is, it's actually important for you to understand, what are you good at and what are you interested in doing. I found that 90% of people are really good at either vision and strategy or execution. There's maybe only 10% or less people that are actually good at both. So if you
Mm.
know that, you might find that actually I'm better at implementation and execution. I'm not quite good at strategy and vision. That's totally okay. I could bring in somebody who then focuses on the strategy and vision, and I take care of execution. Or it might be vice versa. I'm really good at vision and strategy, which is typically most CEOs. They're good at vision and strategy, and they know where they want to get to. But they may not be deeply strong in leadership, management, execution, culture building. Then it's good to find that person who can fill that gap for you.
Okay. So it's, when I typically think of a problem with operations, I'm thinking about, lots of errors, or, obvious inefficiencies, or costs, or things that run out of line, like too much labor, etc. So there aren't certain types of symptoms often that are showing up that people might be looking at that could indicate a problem with operations.
So the way that I define operations is a bit different in the small medium business
Right.
space. It's a bit different than, let's say, you're talking about a large enterprise, and maybe in some large enterprises, a CEO is really thought of somebody who does manufacturing supply chain. Uh, in uh, in small medium sized space, a COO has to be very skilled in every aspect of running a business. So, like for
Mm.
example, let's take a CFO, chief financial officer. They have to be really skilled in finance and accounting, but they don't have to be really skilled in HR or tech or a bunch of other like sales or marketing. And similarly with a CMO, chief marketing officer, they have to be really skilled in marketing, maybe in sales, but they again don't have to be skilled in HR or tech or all these other things. But a COO is a bit of a different person. That's somebody who has to be skilled in every aspect of running a business, at least when we're talking about these smaller, medium sized businesses. That's when they can add the most value. If they're a CEO who's only good at manufacturing or supply chain, then there's a whole bunch of other areas that are going to get missed. So at least in my team, when I hire somebody, and I go through a deep, extensive process before I have somebody join our team, and it helps that I've actually been a fractional CEO myself, so I know what to look for in this kind of space. So everybody in my team has led every major department of a business. And because of that, now when they come up with a decision, let's say that's going to affect HR recruiting, or let's say it's a decision that's going to affect the tech stack that's being used for sales and marketing, or let's say it's a decision that's going to affect their procurement strategy, they're going to have a context that's very different than somebody who only has experience in one area. So I think in the
Right.
small medium sized space, it is actually very important that a CEO can tackle everything, and that means they can tackle revenue issues and sales and marketing issues. They can tackle bottom line stuff as well. So let's say margins, cost structure. They can also tackle team and systems and processes. So kind of like the whole gamut from top line, bottom line, and everything in between with team systems processes.
It almost sounds like you're talking about finding, I don't know, a more experienced entrepreneur with just a different experience set, and bringing them in to help the entrepreneur that's there already,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
owner or
And
CEO.
yeah, and it's a bit different than an advisor. I've had many advisors, business coaches and advisors in the past, and board of directors as well. And those are great. They help you come up with a lot of interesting ideas, but that's kind of where it stops. And that's what I realized every time I'd meet a coach or an advisor, my to-do list would just get longer. And eventually I
Right.
wasn't able to really tackle that to-do list, or I didn't have the right skill set to tackle that to-do list. So at least in our space of fractional COO, we're both the advisor and coach, but then we actually roll up our sleeves and execute.
Yeah, it's that difference between a coach and a consultant, right? Coaches help you come up with ideas, thoughts, etc. Consultants do work for you, and you're bridging those two.
Yeah, and I actually would think you're right, but there's also a third aspect where sometimes a
Okay.
consultant is not able to embed themselves in the culture of the team. And
Right.
I think that's the third layer that it's important for me to make sure we tackle, is that we're just going to be felt like as another internal team member. So there's that when you're dealing at a COO level, you have to be able to command the team. and you have to be able to motivate them and take them in a certain direction. For that, you need the relationships and being an embedded part of the culture. So that's where a CEO can, that's the other layer that they can add on.
Ashish, we've got people from all over the continent here now. We've got Becker, who's here from Myrtle Beach. We have someone from the home improvement industry tuning in from Edmonton, Alberta. Great to see you. Um, let's talk more about tools, because when I think about small business operations and areas where businesses can improve, we often think about new, SaaS platforms or software or technology things that can help make businesses work more smoothly. I would imagine this is one of the big areas where you and your team are able to bring things in, because one of the biggest fears I've always seen from entrepreneurs is that they've got something that works. They may understand that there could be something better, but they're deathly afraid of investing a lot of time, especially, and money into some kind of new tech if they don't really know it's going to work for them, and they understand that they're going to lock themselves into something with a really high switching cost that'll cost a lot of time again to get off into something else. And so I see a lot of people just procrastinate in making these evolutions in their business because they're really worried about making the wrong choice for a lot of these things. Can you address that a little bit about bringing in tools and organizing some of this stuff, and how the workflow of a business works?
Yeah, I think first it's important to know, especially when you're a small, medium-sized business where you've got limitation of time and money to invest. It's important to know what should you invest in and not invest in. It's equally important to know what you should not invest in. Some like especially now, I'm seeing a lot of businesses are saying, "Oh, let's just AI everything. Let's automate everything." But actually, it's more important to ask what is the most valuable thing that I can automate right now, or the most valuable thing that I can apply AI to right now, and start with a prioritized list of what is going to move the needle for the business today or in the near future. And tools are evolving so fast. Like actually, many companies are coming to us and saying, "Hey, can you develop our sales and marketing plan?" But then when I start, or some of our team members start looking into this, most of these tools are things that could so easily be replaced by a competitor that comes out 2 weeks from now. So there's so many new tools that are coming out into the market every week now because of AI. So if you start investing a whole bunch of time and effort and energy right now in something that may only pay dividends 6 months from now or 9 months from now, you might want to pause, because by then there might actually be an even better tool that comes out. So it's
Mhm.
actually good to look at, firstly, let's prioritize on what today we're doing that's taking a lot of time and effort, and we could save very quickly time or money if we implement a solution for it right now. So
It
yeah,
sounds like an 80-20 kind of rationalization.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. You want to, and if there's something that's going to require a deep investment of time and money, you have to make sure that you can start seeing quick wins or results even partway through the whole implementation now. So I'm very focused with many of our companies that what can we improve that's going to make a difference today rather than 6 months from now, because the whole landscape is changing so fast. Even competitive landscapes are changing so fast. Even our customer needs are changing so fast. So really just focus on more and more the near term, what can move the needle today.
Okay. Um, some of the people watching this might be thinking, "Oh, the people, you and the people on your team are really highly specialized people. You must be very expensive." What does the investment look like to bring on someone on a fractional basis? Obviously, it would be a lower expense than bringing on a full-time employee with the same kind of background and education. But can you give us an idea of what the investment looks like?
Yeah. So our 1 hour a day plan, which is on which many of our companies are on, and they see dramatic impact with, is in the 5K range a month. So it's definitely not cheap. We're not cheap. But interestingly, up till now, we have not lost a single customer since we've started. And the reason is that the type of return that our customers get from even 1 hour a day is disproportionate to the investment. So up till now, every engagement that we've had, we've been able to add much more in bottom line or top line or both than investment in us.
And your employees, how many hours typically a day have they been committed to the different clients?
So we've got a range. We've got some that are at that 4 hour a day plan, and we've got many that are at the 1 hour a day plan. And many of them, they started 1 hour a day and then they end up going to 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day
No,
thereafter.
no, I mean your employees on the employee side. So is
Ah,
your average employee team member been committed out to 5 or 6 or 7 hours a day? Like I'm just wondering what their
uh,
workload is like.
yeah, most of them are at like 6 to 8 hours a day, and that's across usually 3 to 4 engagements.
Okay. So they because I'm cognizant as well too that your team members have a certain mind space or focus. They have to kind of keep a lot of information about each client close at hand in their thinking. And so obviously, having 7 clients would be very difficult for someone to keep their head around.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's why we typically have 3 to 4 max per person. And you're right. Like just getting to know people in enough detail on each team, or to know each of the cultures of every company, it takes time and effort. And so there's only so much that one individual can handle. So that's why we try and limit to 3 to 4. And 3 to 4, like each of my team members are professional fractionals or full-time fractionals. Like this is what they do. So they've now, and we've all together as a team developed interesting models to make sure that we can feel like we're deeply embedded in every company we work with.
And how many of them are former business owners?
Probably half of them are former business owners, and
Okay.
all of them have had management consulting as well as operational experience. So, meaning like they've worked in like these kind of consulting capacities in the past where
Mhm.
they've jumped from many different contexts to another, and they've been hands on deep dive operators in many companies in their career.
Let's relate this now to transactions. So, if someone is looking at selling their business, I mean, obviously, one of the messages that I repeat quite often is that a business that is, better organized with systems and processes and better tools in place and better management techniques, obviously, is going to be easier to sell. It's also going to be a lot more interesting to own and run while the person still owns it. And you mentioned about the client that in the construction field that was losing money, and then you helped them turn around and is now being sold, I think is what you said. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, about sort of the changing of a business to make it in a more saleable condition and how your services help this out?
Yeah. First thing to understand is who could be a potential buyer. That's a very important question to first try and address. If it's going to be another individual or let's say a PE firm, then the type of ways you optimize your business today will be different than, let's say, your buyer is a strategic buyer. Let's say like a competitor of ours that might want to find something unique in my business and then integrate that into their business because it's a gap currently. So let's take, for example, let's say I've developed a new SaaS tool. And I think that my potential acquirer will be Microsoft. And Microsoft will be interested in my business because I have a set of customers that are really interesting and unique. And they're a set of customers that Microsoft doesn't have at the moment. This is, of course, just a random example. So then, if that's the case, and that's who I eventually want to go after, or people like Microsoft is who I want to eventually go after to acquire my business, then today I'm going to start making decisions to really find what is that unique thing in my business that a potential acquirer will want to buy, and then I'm going to really optimize that, or those few things. I'm going to optimize as much as possible. So if it is a unique customer base, I'm going to really try and optimize my business, acquiring more and more of those customers and making them really deeply connected to my business and interacting with my business all the time and buying things for my business all the time. And that's what I'm going to spend all my time and effort on. But let's say if I'm going to eventually sell to a PE firm or an
And
yeah,
and the reason why you want to focus there is because your administrative systems, et cetera, probably wouldn't survive a merger with Microsoft. They're just going to impose their management structure over this business. I mean, the way they do things now. Really, they want the product and the customers is what they're focused on.
exactly. And they're going to pay a multiple based on some way that they value that customer base. They're not
Yeah.
going to pay a multiple, most likely, based on my EBITDA. So they're going to be, and actually, as an example, the first company that I had co-founded, I mentioned it was a wireless company, and we developed a whole bunch of interesting IP, and and we really tried to optimize for that IP because eventually we realized that that's what's going to be most valuable. It wasn't our revenue, it wasn't our profit. It was really this unique IP and having really good patents around that IP, and actually showing proof that people care about this IP, like potential customers care about this IP. And
Yeah.
eventually, that's what Qualcomm, which is a big company that likes to buy unique IP, that's what they went after. So they paid us not multiples based on revenue or EBITDA, but based on the IP, and they valued the IP in some certain way. So now, if I'm going to be acquired by a PE firm or an individual, then they're going to be looking at many different things. They might be looking at, well, does this have a good leadership team in place that will continue sustaining the business after the owner leaves? Does it have EBITDA that has been growing steadily over time? Does it have some moat around its customers or product or service or whatever that it will sustain after the transition? And how steady has its revenue or EBITDA trajectory been over time? So now, depending on if that's who's going to eventually buy, now I'm going to retool my business to focus on EBITDA, on leadership team, on steadiness, on consistency over time. So on different parameters. So hopefully that gives a bit of context.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. The because what you want to do in that second scenario is you want to create a functioning machine that someone can really see how they're going to be able to step in and be able to run. That a lot of the structure and everything there has already been put into place.
Exactly. And they'll pay a higher multiple based on those factors being in place.
The you know there's two levers there, right? There's the yes, someone is going putting all that stuff in place usually results in a more profitable operation. And a more profitable operation could you move you up into the next echelon of valuation multiples. So it's really a 1-2 punch. Not only do you get to enjoy running a business with more profitability when you make this kind of investment and do this work, you then could cross the line where people are generally paying 3x EBITDA to 4x EBITDA or whatever. So you get the that logarithmic advance, I guess, in the business value, which is that's actually one of the things that PE firms look for. They go looking for the smaller businesses they can bundle together to make the bigger business that breaches one of those lines so they can exit at a higher multiple factor.
Exactly. Yeah. And some of the interesting things is it's also important, like when we get engaged for helping a business prepare for an eventual exit, we also look at what kind of multiples exist in your current industry versus adjacent industries. Or let's say if we could take your product or service to an adjacent industry, would there be different multiples that could be relevant there? And so we might, over the course of a year or two, start tweaking your business so it could add on, like for example, if you're a traditional business but you have an interesting SaaS offer or something that could be converted into a SaaS offering, the multiples or the type of valuation you might get in that kind of scenario might be quite different than if you were just a traditional industry business. So we can layer on different things or adjust the direction of a business. So eventually you could actually be in a much more valued niche than where you might even be right now.
Okay, let's talk about buying. And so one of the things that I've said quite frequently on this channel is that one of the best opportunities for people is to buy a business that is profitable but has problems that you know how to address. And so sometimes we can see a business and it may be profitable, but we might be able to tell pretty easily that it is performing at a subpar level. Like it's maybe through some research, we figure out that the average, EBITDA should be 12% or something, but this one only has 6. So we know that the hard part, getting customers, has been done, but there's obviously something wrong with how they convert the revenue into net income at the bottom. Are there any bits of advice that you might give for someone who's looking at a business who gets the idea, hey, if I buy this based on its current cash flow, if I bring in someone like Ashish or his team, could they help me improve it? Like, are there certain tells that we could look for that might indicate low hanging fruit for someone with COO background to help fix?
Yeah. Firstly, just a word of note from my own personal experience. Businesses, pretty much every metric that you're going to read is usually in reality worse than what you've read in your due diligence timeframe. And situations are usually a bit tougher than what you've researched beforehand. So it's very rare, at least from my own personal experience and others that I've heard from or spoken with, it's rare that even if you find a really rosy scenario beforehand, or you find that, oh, here's one gap, and that gap is so easy to plug and fill that it's going to be a home run. That once you eventually acquire the business, that's all you need to do, or that's as easy to do
Are
as you think.
are you saying it's difficult for someone who doesn't own a business yet to fix things that the current owner who may have been there for decades can't fix?
I'm saying that just every scenario is tougher than you'd ever expect, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I listen, I get it because we see this kind of stuff online all the time, right? Like, the person who goes to visit the business and sees that there's a fax machine there and goes, "Whoa, all I have to do is bring in, technology, and obviously I can do better with this," before they even understand what the fax machine does. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I
Everything is,
agree, and it's great. Thank you for bringing this caution to the audience because it's so true. It's really hard to go in and make any kind of quick fix in something as complex as a business.
yeah, exactly. And things will usually take longer than you'd expect, and they'll be more difficult than you expect. So I think if you know that going in, and you have already planned for that, that means you're at least firstly going to make sure you have enough working capital in the business to get you through longer than you would expect to fix things, and that you have the right people that are going to come in with you that are going to help you to fix things that you don't know of right now. And if you, I think these are two really important things. So, capital, and secondly, team. And much of the time, the team that exists in a company will need upskilling or upgrading, or there'll be some gaps that need to be filled, whether that's on the strategic level or on the execution and operations level. So, if you have somebody that you can trust, that you know, and you've spent time with them before acquiring a business, and you know that they've faced many of the situations that often happen, like when you're integrating into a new team or a team that already exists and you're bringing in new people, or you're working through solving a bunch of gaps that exist right now, but there could be a bunch of extra gaps that you just haven't accounted for yet, or you weren't aware of yet, or the current founder missed telling you about it, or didn't think it was much of an issue. Then if you have somebody that can help you through, just work through a bunch of these things, and they've done it again and again in the past, I think that can make a big difference and can help shorten your whole time frame of getting to where you want to get to in that business.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk about a little bit more about assumptions because I think this is a great path to go down. Um, you know, it's easy to go online and find online content about like hustle culture and DIY and just working harder to make things happen. When it comes to scaling a business or growing a business, what are some of the common myths that you've heard that really are not true, based on the experience that you've had with the clients you've worked with?
Yeah. First is that it seems like everybody wants to grow their business on the surface. But the reality is, deep down, not every business owner wants to grow their business. And I think that's one fallacy that I often see, is that everybody feels like they need to be growing just because that's what they hear everywhere. They need to be growing their business. I think it's first important to take a deep look into yourself and what you really want out of your business. Maybe some people, and actually there seems to be a lot of people, they're happy if the business can sustain and maintain and deliver them a decent lifestyle that they're seeking. And that's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And for other people, they're deeply interested in growing their business. When you grow a business, you have to realize that it's going to take investment of your time, your mental space, your energy, and of course, finances. So the what's required to grow a business is very different than what's required to maintain and sustain a business. Even maintaining and sustaining a business is not that trivial because the landscape keeps on changing. Like I mentioned before, you might have new competitors that come in, your customer needs might change. And so just to sustain and maintain itself takes quite a bit. So you have to be prepared, firstly, if you really want to scale, just make sure that that's what you truly desire and truly want. And you're willing to put in the time, effort, and money and mental space. And often it even requires a lot of emotional stability and strength to work through a lot of the challenges that come through. It often even might require upskilling your team or upgrading your team. It might require Yeah, many things that you just haven't thought of at the moment. So, firstly, that's important to know yourself and what you want. And I think that's one of the biggest roadblocks that I often find with people. They're going after the wrong thing, something that they truly don't want. So, if they want stability, but they're actually now trying to grow the business, it eventually falls flat because they're just not able to put in their whole self into that because that's not what they want. So, this I think would be one of the first things to look at.
It's funny. I was having a conversation with somebody last week about retirement, and they opened the conversation by saying that they weren't sure if they could afford to retire, and they were kind of anxious about it. And after asking a few questions, like how much money do you spend right now? Like, what do you anticipate having for an income in order to sustain your lifestyle afterwards? Like, just asking a few questions, it became very clear quite quickly that this person probably could have afforded to retire 5 years ago. And I said, so like, what really is the problem here? And it was revealed that the problem was that they just don't know how to stop.
Hmm.
Like, how, like, you get into this habit of getting up and going every morning, and you have your routine and you do the work every day, and people then do that for like 20 years, and changing that is a little bit scary. So I find sometimes people even hang on to these ideas like, oh, I've got to work hard so I can afford to retire, even though the data shows that that's not true.
Hmm.
It's this momentum that carries us sometimes.
Mhm. Absolutely true. I think that self-reflection and you always hear this in spiritual terms, know yourself first. That's the most important thing. And I think that's equally relevant in the entrepreneurial space as well.
Um, what what do you think is one of the biggest things people underestimate when it comes to operations and systems in a business? I know
Uh,
you've given us a lot of tidbits here through the conversation, but what do you've said many times already today that the expectation of what it should take is always, shorter than what it really does take. So what are some of the common things that people think are going to be quick and easy that are not?
yeah, I think one of them is we're dealing with people, even though eventually, like right now, CEOs are all dealing with people. Eventually, maybe half their people might be agents, but AI agents. But right now, and for the foreseeable future, we're dealing with people in a company. And with people, there's all kinds of great things that come with that, and there's also challenges that come with that. Like people are growing living entities. Like they'll evolve as time goes on. If you can help them evolve and grow, if you can coach them and guide them, and you're deeply interested in helping their evolution, which is an amazing thing about people. We all evolve and grow and change, especially if we're in the right scenario and are given the right guidance and help and support. And then there's also the challenges of some people might be a misfit for your culture or for what goals you're actually working towards. And so I think this is one of the things that people often don't consider is that we're actually dealing with people. And so it's important that if you are, like, let's say if you bring on a CEO, make sure that there's somebody who really has a deep interest in people and has spent a lot of time in working with and managing and working through a lot of the challenges with people, as well as the great positives that occur with people. A lot of times, a great COO is somebody who just knows how to navigate building a deep culture. And by culture, I mean, let's say if the CEO is not in a meeting and their team members are in that meeting, the CEO and the CEO will know how those team members are going to make a decision, how they're going to think, how they're going to process without them having to be there. That's when you know that a culture is really strong. So it takes somebody who's really been through the ropes and has been a manager and leader and has deep interest in that and passion in that to be able to create and develop and instill a good, strong culture that will evolve and grow as time goes on.
Uh, we have a question here from uh, from Becker. I think that might be William Becker. He goes, it seems like the natural next step is growing into a full-time COO employee from having a fractional one. And he's asking how you handle the potential transition.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are many contexts where we're actually trying to work ourselves out of a job because we know it's relevant for that company to have a full timer that's there from morning to evening. And that is relevant in many different contexts. Like, let's say when a company gets to over 150 team members, then we often see that it's quite needed to have somebody who's full time there day in, day out. Or there's also contexts where let's say the company is all in office, Actually, we have many engagements where we're the only remote person. Everybody else is in office, but it sometimes does make sense when we feel like it's relevant now to bring in somebody who can be there in person in the office day in, day out. And this is just like any other transition where we first ideally get to the place where the company has a good foundation, where there's already a good culture in place. A lot of the gaps are already filled that were missing before in order to get us to what our goals are. And now to get us to the next level, it's relevant to transition to having a full timer. So first, we really work on getting the foundations in the company correct on the top line, on the bottom line, in that team systems and processes. And then now we see, okay, what is the next set to get us to the next level, the next set of skills needed in a new COO or in a new team member. So then we start hiring and helping hire for those skills. And then we come up with the right transition plan to make sure that it's seamless between us and the new person coming in, and there's good overlap, and that there's good accountability mechanisms in place to make sure that they're able to keep up and do the right things.
Great. This is awesome. Ashish, and I know you mentioned earlier about revenue ranges, but what kind of business would be the ideal client for you and your firm?
Yeah, like just to reiterate the revenue. So maybe our smallest clients are a little less than $1 million a year in revenue. Largest ones are maybe around 50 million a year in revenue. And industry-wise, we work across all different industries, so that's not been a limitation so far. And then really, if you feel like there's somewhere you want to get to in the business, whether that is growth trajectory or whether that's getting you out of the day-to-day operations, or whether there's a turnaround needed in your business and you feel like it is possible to get there, but you're not quite sure how to get there, then it can be relevant to get somebody who's really skilled to come in and help you and be there by your side day in, day out.
Awesome. And if people want to reach out and talk with you, how do they reach you?
Yeah, our website is scaleupexec.com. And from there, you can actually even book time directly with me. Even if you're not interested in a CEO right now, but you just want to bounce ideas off for your business, I'm happy to be a sounding board. So you can always connect with me through the website.
Awesome. I will put a link to the company website and to your LinkedIn profile down in the notes down below. And I want to say thank you. Victor, as well, over in the UK, wants to say thank you for the very useful information and tips. I would concur and emphasize that as well. And it's really great to see you again today.
Thank you so much. Nice conversation. Good questions.
Oh, no problem. I try hard. Well, we'll see you later. All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses? Easy. Go over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me and how I work with my clients. You can learn more about my books and courses that I've prepared for you. You can find out how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, and more. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest. Special thanks go to Mark Willis at Lake Growth Financial, today's video sponsor. Mark helps people better manage their personal and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally and I've seen others use it successfully for years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find all the interviews I've done with Mark and learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up for a free consultation to learn what this solution might look like for you.